We're delighted to see so many people here. This is really terrifically exciting. My name is S.J. Avery. I'm co-chair of 4th on 4th Avenue with Grace Friedman. And we've been working for a while with Nick behind me. He's the man behind the scenes, but he's the person who really has been doing a tremendous amount of organizing on this event. Just to give you a quick bit of background, at 4th on 4th did a survey of our membership and had close to 800 people answer it about what were their main concerns on 4th Avenue. And the top concern was flooding. We had a meeting at the old Stonehouse to talk about that flooding. We followed it up with a Zoom meeting for people who wanted to get more involved. And at that point, Nick sat in at that meeting, and we decided to meet together as a smaller group to say, well, what could we do next? So we met with some of the people here. I think there were only 5 of us all together, and we decided that we would have a meeting about flooding, and we would do it for the City of Waterloo. It seemed to be appropriate. And so we had a meeting down at the Whole Foods, the 2nd floor. We were upstaged by a group of brownies for a long time, but it was a terrific meeting, and we were surprised when more than 30 people showed up. And we said, well, we've got to continue doing this. This is important. And so we were talking with the councilman's office and councilperson's office, and we heard from her office that she was getting a lot of complaints too from people upslope. The people who had gone to our meeting were primarily the people who were living close to the Gownaus Canal. But there were people upslope who were complaining continually about problems with flooded basements. It never used to be that bad. What was happening? So we put our heads together, and with the help of the councilwoman, who has a much greater draw than we do, we put this meeting together with a group of people. And we feel that, calling it The Water Connects Us is really appropriate, because whether you're upslope or downslope, it's an issue for you. And so we have a collaborative team, the City Sponge, FOFA, New York City Environmental Protection Office, Gownaus Canal, some of these people you're going to be hearing from later, Field Forum, New York City Emergency Management, Slope Civic Council, and we have to give a shout out to the designer of our flyers, who is Nevin here? Nevin's well, if you know her, tell her we said she did a terrific job on the flyer, because it's really snappy. And we decided to have a meeting. And what we're doing is we're really pretty much following the format we had in our first meeting. And if we can go to that format, I should do that. No techie here. We're going to talk in 4 general areas. One is about flooding concerns and also initiatives that are already going on in the city. The next section is going to be flooding stories from the community. And we found that was one of the most significant things the last time, because people, found out they weren't alone in terms of flooding, but they also found that some people had come up with solutions. What to do before all the sewers are built. The next piece is going to be our expert panel, and we'll have representatives from the Department of Environmental Protection, New York City Office of Emergency Management, Gownaus Canal Conservancy, which has been studying the whole watershed, the Gownaus watershed, which really starts up at the park and goes all the way down to 4th Avenue and beyond, and it's the water we share. And then we'll go into, and with the City Sponge, of course, and Field Forum, which has been doing some interesting work on landscaping. We will then meet in smaller groups, and Nick will talk about that a little later. But there are 2 things I really want to say. One is a big thank you to Nick, who has done really the work of herding cats to get us to get our presentations together, get our meetings together. This is not easy stuff for anybody who's done it. The other thing is to thank you thanks and an introduction of our sort of keynote speaker, who's going to talk about why she's here. And I'm very proud to introduce Councilwoman Hanif.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Councilmember Shahana, so great to see you all this evening. I just want to first kick off by saying that I'm dealing with some health issues, so you might hear a raspiness in my voice. I can't project for too long, but nonetheless, really, really grateful for all of you for joining us. The response was immense. And 3 years into my term, it is no surprise. This is not a new issue. This is an issue that keeps growing and gets more challenging by the day. And I think what we've attempted to do right now with this cadre of experts, community leaders, our neighbors, is to really put our brains together and say, hey, this is affecting all of us, and the solution can't just be house by house, but really to look at from a larger perspective and see where we can make legislative changes, where we need to push for more funding, how do we get our community groups that are doing environmental justice works to apply for those funding and bring that money here, and so much more. So I'm really excited that we're here tonight, and want to just thank SJ, want to thank the Slope Civic Council for hosting, our friends from the City Sponge, and then of course Field Form, our city agencies for joining us. It is not a one-person solution. This requires a multifaceted conversation and a multi-pronged solution. Just to let everybody know which neighborhoods I represent, in addition to Park Slope and Gownaus, I also represent Kensington, a sliver of Borough Park, Windsor Terrace, Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, and a little bit of Borum Hill. Now, all of those neighborhoods have been dealing with flooding in a variety of ways. And so one solution, we can't just come up with one solution to fit in all of these neighborhoods. So flooding water connects us. Couldn't be more fitting, this title, particularly because stormwater really does unite us all. Our neighborhoods, particularly Park Slope and Gownaus, are part of the larger Gownaus watershed, forming a single ecological community facing shared challenges. Now, as we grapple with increased rainfall and stormwater, especially amid our escalating climate crisis, this issue is very urgent right here at home. Flooding doesn't affect just one block or area. When basements and yards in Park Slope flood, the water flows downhill into Gownaus. When Gownaus experiences flooding and the water table rises, it creates a ripple effect upstream. Many of you have shared your experiences with sewer backups and flooding throughout the district, and we understand the significant toll this takes on our community. Just last September, a water main break near Mashadi Circle in Prospect Park caused about 7 inches of rainfall to create a lake that overflowed onto nearby streets and parkland. This upstream and downstream movement of water between Park Slope and Gownaus has very serious implications for our infrastructure and quality of life. Now, zooming into District 39, more specifically, I want to discuss the current state of infrastructure in District 39, including the improvements that my office is actively monitoring and holding our agency partners accountable for completing. First, I'll start with sewer enhancements, and I have some more details today because it's an ever rapidly changing condition. So a combined sewer relief project of over $230 million is currently underway on 7th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenues. This project is a direct result of the Gownaus rezoning. Right now, it is in its first phase. It's at 7th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenues. The second phase is going to take place on 4th Avenue between DeGraw and 7th Street, and 3rd Avenue, and the third phase is 3rd Avenue between 7th and 22nd Street. We're very closely tracking the progress because it's not just simply about this transformation that will come, but also the quality of life issues as construction takes place. So we're very closely and intimately working with the nearby neighbors to make sure that the process of construction doesn't impact their quality of life. And that's the approach that my office has taken for any kind of construction that takes place. We know that this sewer project is going to be great for our community, but in the meantime, also as construction is taking place, we understand the noise pollution and the vibrations and all of the other concerns, and want to make sure that we play a strong liaison and a bridge between agency, construction work, and our neighbors. The second cohort of issues that I've been prioritizing are green infrastructure assets. So I frequently hear from our constituents about the need for more rain gardens to absorb rainfall. I'm very pleased to share that the Department of Environmental Protection conducted a survey of Park Slope and implemented many kinds of green infrastructure assets in our area, which includes 100 features of rain gardens, green roofs, permeable surfaces throughout Gownaus and Park Slope, thanks to DEP's Green Infrastructure Grant Program. The third bucket of work that's happening right here in our community in Windsor Terrace and South Brooklyn aims to manage 35 million gallons of stormwater through the installation of 7 miles of porous pavement. And we've been hearing from a lot of our neighbors, hey, this is happening in Queens, can we get it in our community, can we get it in our park, in our neighborhood? And certainly I've been a strong advocate for porous pavement. There's key legislative opportunities to study the benefits of porous pavement, and Windsor Terrace is going to be a really strong pilot for us to see how this goes and where we can replicate. So the project is still underway, and it's going to take about a year longer to complete in all of the designated locations. We are really, really excited to receive the data that comes out of this program. Now, going into what have we been hearing from our community, and I just want to point out some key people from my office who many of you liaise with, talk to. Matt is my chief of staff, and then Brian Gross, who's in the back, he's our constituent services director. He's likely the staff person you're directing the 311 case number to, and we're able to expedite to various city partners. And then Hannah is our community engagement manager. She also leads participatory budgeting, among wearing other hats. And tonight's event is really a convening that she played a really tremendous role in. We have been hearing, of course, about sewer backups, particularly on Union Street. Many residents have shared their experiences of sewer backups during heavy rainfall. This is not a surprise. We are actively working with the Department of Environmental Protection to address these concerns. We continue to collect 311 complaints to ensure that DEP is aware of recurring issues. I encourage you all to use the 311 platform. It does help us to create the case for a particular corridor, and to really bring eyes and conduct an assessment in that particular zone. So anytime you do have an issue, flooding or whatever else, definitely recommend that you use the 311 platform. And if the case closes, sometimes that happens and that can be very frustrating, just send along the case number to Brian and we'll look into it. we've been hearing about green infrastructure as well. So our community wants to see more rain gardens. We've been hosting rain barrel distributions. Now for the 3 years I've been in office, we've hosted 3 rain barrel distributions, and they are really popular. And these kind of small infrastructure upgrades are really useful. They provide a strong utility. And so our community wants more of the kind of immediate ways to curtail flooding. And we've also gotten asks about rain barriers to protect homes from floodwaters. We're really grateful to the Slope Civic Council and many other organizations that are doing deep community engagement. That is another facet of what our community wants, to just understand the various terminology of the climate crisis and get to know neighbors. I think that's an important part of this work, recognizing that you're not alone going through this, and coming together, and particularly by local groups, is a really strong asset. And the Civic Council has hosted 2 sold-out tours showcasing the ecology of the streams hidden beneath Park Slope that flow into the Gownaus Canal. Has anybody been on that tour? Great, awesome. Okay, so folks are familiar with that tour and the Civic Council. And these events really highlight the enthusiasm for understanding and engaging with our local environment. And I consider it important, which is why we offer support to these organizations to carry on. And then coming up with local solutions through participatory budgeting. Now I know that participatory budgeting isn't a ton of money, but it is one of the ways in which my office utilizes our city dollars to bring in community members to determine where do we want to see some changes, where do we want to put our city dollars towards. And over the last 3 years, particularly, climate resiliency projects keep coming up. And they indicate, at least from the local perspective, that I get to then bring to City Hall and say, hey, these are the top issues that are recurring and keep coming up in terms of necessity for our livelihood. More trees means we live longer, we breathe better air. Clutter-free, litter-free streets means we get to walk more. And so all of this really helps make the case for stronger advocacy for myself and the other overlapping elected leaders who also deeply believe in the solutions for this crisis. Now, with participatory budgeting in particular, we have funded more trees. We are undergoing a 100 tree we're deliberating where they should get planted, but the 100 trees project came out of participatory budgeting. We have also funded educational workshops focused on environmental education and its local impacts. So tonight, as we engage in discussions, I am really looking forward to hearing from you and hearing from our experts. I'm here to listen because I don't have every solution, but I do know that we have solutions, and we need to come together and trust that our community can rise together. And so as we move forward, I want to just extend gratitude to our city agencies. You know, liaising with the city agencies isn't the sexiest part of the job, and oftentimes it's quite frustrating. It's quite frustrating to navigate, you know, residents who are absolutely at their wits' end, and city agency and the bureaucracy and the red tape really delaying response time. And what we've witnessed also within this particular administration are budget cuts that have severely impacted service output from city agencies. And Department of Environmental Protection is one of the most important of this time, and we need to beef up these agencies. We need to make sure that there are adequate staffing who know this work to be able to deliver to us. So, really looking forward tonight, as Jade mentioned, this is the second meeting. Policy recommendations that come out of this, there isn't a big slate or package of legislation at the city level concerning flooding mitigation. So that is one arena where I'm very interested to push to see if there are any kind of legislative opportunities here. And then for the neighbors discussion, I'm excited by the discussion that's going to follow my remarks, because I met with the neighbors on 10th Street and I was really inspired what they've been able to do. So Stephanie and team, like, I'm really, really grateful that you're here and that neighbors will be able to hear directly from you as to how you all developed a strong sense of we can do this together. So really excited to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to a productive discussion, and I know we'll have time at the very end for a meet and greet, and I look forward to responding to questions related to flooding or anything else. And before I wrap, I just want to know, where is everybody coming from? Park Slope? Gownaus. Windsor Terrace. Anywhere else? Okay.
Clinton Hill.
Clinton Hill. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, now I'm going to hand it back to the panel.
Thank you for joining us and giving us an overview of what's going on. So I'm Nick. I'm the City Sponge guy. And I started the City Sponge because I had to figure all this stuff out on my own. And I was like, I might as well share it because it's kind of interesting but also complicated. So that was the story of the City Sponge. We're going to turn to stories from neighbors now. Now, is Scott here? Okay. Scott's not here, so I'm going to do Scott's bit badly, but I'm going to do it. So we're going to start up by going sort of down the slope. So we had 3 slots. Stephanie up on 10th Street, then Scott down on 5th Ave, then Joanne down on 4th Ave. And I think it tells a story of the water. So let's start with Stephanie. Come on down, Stephanie. You're the next contestant on The Flood Is Yours. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. And thank you, Councilmember Hanif, for coming to my house to see one of my flooding problems. I live on 10th Street, as you see, between 7th and 8th. And before I go into my stories, I just want to say this is about the 1-year anniversary of the September 29th, which was, I think, called Tropical Storm Ophelia, which was a huge shock. I think we all felt it. I just want to acknowledge what's going on in Georgia and North Carolina. You know, we have flooded basements, they have no houses. So this is the climate crisis, and I encourage all of you to be climate voters and climate activists on the big picture. But getting down to the basement, my first flooding story is about my basement, which you see there on September 29th. We had water problems in my house for a long time before that. My house is, as many of them are, 130 years old, and we were given a hint that we were above an underground stream when we were in contract to buy the house, and we bought it anyway. I've since learned that yes, indeed, there is a historic stream under my house, and there was also a lot of deterioration in the infrastructure of the house, which caused all kinds of water issues in my cellar, which at that time was very primitive and had a pretty much dirt floor. There was water gushing up from the floor, water coming in from the wall, all kinds of problems we had to solve. So in a sense, that was good preparation to mitigate flooding that came later. In 2004, we decided to really deal with the basement. So we underpinned the foundation, which had been undermined by said historic stream. We lowered the level of the floor so we could have more headroom in the cellar. And we hired Vulcan waterproofing, which my husband heard an ad for at a Yankee game rain delay. And he had kept that little piece of paper for years. And so Vulcan did a French drain system around the inside perimeter of the cellar with a great big thing that looks like perforated, vacuum cleaner tube that dumps into the sump with a pump. And then over that was gravel and then a beautiful new floor with I'm going to solutions because I think we're all interested in solutions. This has worked very well for us. Vapor barrier, rebar, beautiful poured concrete floor that pitched into the sump. And then the Vulcan system doesn't connect the floor to the wall. So there's a little channel of gravel so that when water comes in, it can just go out. So, of course, during the big storms of Ida in 2021 and then September 29, the sump pump worked great until it didn't, and water backed up. Now, how much of that water was from the sewer overflow, how much was from underground stream, I don't really know. But it eventually, in a couple hours, it was gone. So there wasn't a really big, huge cleanup, which was good. I did, however, after September 29, I bought a couple of pumps from Amazon that sit on the floor, and I have hoses going out to the front yard where they'll dump water in the bush, hopefully, if we get water, which we'll see. So that's story number one. So we have been pretty successful in having a nice finished basement, which stays dry, it's not damp, nothing gets rusty anymore, you can actually keep books down there, it's nice. So that was a good solution. Next story was the backyard. September 29, for the first time, resulted in so much water in such a short period of time. The soil in the backyard, which is pretty much all soil, there's very little paved surface back there, couldn't be absorbed fast enough, so it formed a lake. And the lake came within about 8 feet of my garden apartment's back door where I had tenants. And it probably would have come in the back door if it hadn't overflowed into my downhill neighbor's yard, which he did not appreciate. So the solution was, as you see, something that actually I should acknowledge two of my wonderful neighbors, Jane Willis and Elizabeth Quinn, who pulled together a meeting of neighbors after September 29 to really deal with this on a neighborhood basis. And through that meeting, we were introduced to Field Form, who did this work for me. This was dug out of what was a lawn. This is a stormwater management system, a tank, French drains, overflow valve, all kinds of stuff. And it all happens by hand with very hard workers who dig, and put it in bags and dump it out. It's like incredible. So it took about 2 weeks, and so once it's all covered over, it's covered over with new topsoil that hopefully will, filter the water much faster into the ground, and then it will be sequestered in that tank until it can be absorbed into the ground, because there's no sewer connection from the backyard to the storm sewer. There's no drain back there. So I'm hoping that will work. And I thank Councilmember Hanif for visiting and seeing this and helping us work through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing your story, Stephanie. Scott is not here. So unfortunately, I would love for Scott to tell you his story, but I'm just going to have to show it to you. You know Bagel World? Yeah. Probably had a couple bagels there, maybe a coffee. Beautiful store, great place, community center on top. Down below is a different story. And he actually sent me this video, which was just the situation of water shooting down the hill and gathering down on Fifth Ave. And you can see it just shooting down like a stream down the sidewalk and the curb. And it's not going in the sewer. it's just traveling. And it's white water, actually. By the time it gets to Fifth Avenue, it's like white water. This is down in his basement. It was like this. Now, when I talked to Scott, he was like, I had a lot of stuff in the basement, cups, things that I use for my business, food stuff, and I think he said something like $50,000 worth of material was down there, and it was, a lot of it was ruined. You can't make everything bagels with stuff that's sitting down there right now. So he had to deal with, how do I source this water, where is it coming from, and then he had to actually clean up what was gathering. So you get the idea there. This one, you can see the water got even higher. So that was an earlier shot, it just kept going up. So even the stuff that was raised had to be raised or thrown out. And Scott, is a friendly guy, and he doesn't want to complain, but he tells me that a lot of the neighbors of businesses on Fifth Ave have similar issues, and they all come to him, they're like, what are we going to do? They are tenants in buildings they don't own. So the line between whose responsibility is this can be murky, right? And so they want help. It's very expensive to fix that. It's not a building he owns. So that's an area that perhaps we could get some help on, is how do renters and businesses deal with landlords when you have something like that and it sort of falls in between. Okay, Scott is probably at the bagel store right now, hopefully making some everything bagels. So let's turn now, we're gonna go further down the hill. We're gonna go to Joanne. Joanne, come on up. And I will set up your slide. Yeah, you can press this one first. You can tell me when you're ready. Okay.
Hi everybody, my name is Joanne Amatrano. My family owned the building on Carroll and 4th Avenue since 1905, and it was flooding back then. It's just a lot worse now. It's been unbearable, and I fought with the city basically for 15 years to get a job done, like where they would study the infrastructure. They had DVC draw up a plan. They had to redesign it. It took an additional 5 years. Ironically, it flooded 2 weeks after the job was finished, and I really lost all hope. So I took things into my own hands and said, I need to figure out a way to protect my property, because it gets very expensive to constantly throw things out. And I have a tenant on the corner that's a cafe. You might heard of Root Health Cafe. So the first tenant that was in there, they basically lost everything. It was right after they first opened. The flood washed away the inner cafe flooring, their refrigeration. Everything had to get like it chucked. So it basically was a struggle, and we worked together to help keep them going. And they also tried to get money from the city, and it took about 4 years, and they got like a fraction of what their loss was. So enough about all that. So fast forward to now, I don't agree with all the construction going on, because I feel like the infrastructure should have came first.
Thank you.
You're adding something onto something that's already taxed to the max, and it's just been a lot worse. And I live right across from a major project going on, and my one request was that they would take a precaution before the flood would happen, because I knew it would. It's a brownfield. And they didn't, and they had somebody from DEC appointed to work with me, and he told me they were gonna put bales of hay to stop flood waste going into the catch basin, and I showed them pictures. I said, this is way beyond a little flood.
Yeah.
It's over the roofs of cars on my corner. So we did have a flood, and I got sick for 3 weeks from chemicals that were in the water, and I'm glad I'm fine now. But you could see what happens on my corner. And ironically, I don't get any water in my house now. You could see this and wonder, like, how does that happen? So I developed a board that's waterproof. I have a track on my front door. It's pain in the neck to step over it every day, but since I work about 2 miles from home, I don't want to take a risk if a pop-up storm happens, so I have it up. I have Gorilla waterproof tape, which is like one of the best inventions, and I don't own stock in the company. I also have quick dams, which is something that has been helpful as a backup in case the tape starts to get a little loose. I have pumps in the basement, before any kind of implement, whether I check the roof gutters, I make sure that everything is ready to go, and then you cross your fingers. The first picture is my daughter. That was when we first started barricading, was with sandbags, which proved to be probably the worst thing to ever use because the water just goes all around, it always finds a way in. So we got rid of all of that, and the next picture is the board. So you can see how high the water is outside, and basically I don't have any water inside. We do the same thing for the cafe, drop down slide, put the tape, everything. Usually we have to pry the tape off, that's how well it works, even with all that water. So I don't know if this will help anybody here, but I do get flushed because just talking about floods has given me so much anxiety. So like, even just coming here knowing it was about floods, like my heart starts going, and anytime I see the weather forecast is something terrible on the way, I actually get sick. Like I get so neurotic that I'm constantly checking the radar. I have 3 apps on my phone, so I'm like, which one is saying which is, you know, I have to pay attention to get home, you know. But yes,
Could you talk about you said sump pumps in the basement.
yes.
Where does the water come to in the basement and how do they work? Do they have check valves and they go into your sewer system?
Well, yeah, I have a check valve also, but I don't get any water in my basement because I have a board like this by my cellar, and that's also taped, and I also seal the whole top of the metal cellar. I seal the cafe. The cafe has 2 doors. Both of them have the panels, and they're also taped. So I don't get any water in my
So
basement.
everything is coming from outside?
Everything is out,
It's coming from
everything
the
just
street
stays
in.
in the street like a pool. And when usually, knock on wood, I hope I'm not jinxing myself, that's not wood, but.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a question and
I'm
answer
sorry.
period for Joanne and others after. We're gonna spend time where you can ask these questions. But I just wanna make sure.
the name of the tape?
Gorilla waterproof tape.
Gorilla waterproof
Yeah.
tape.
So- And you can get it to match your decor. So I have a white door, I have.
We're gonna see if they'll sponsor our next meeting.
It's really a blessing. It's really a blessing to this.
Joanne, I just wanna also, you should just tell quickly people, like what you do when there's rain. You go out and you clean the sewers.
Constantly. Actually, we had a conversation previously. There was one night where it started to flood when my kids were little. And I was out there and I hit my head on the scaffolding because I was in such a panic to get all the debris up because I saw the water coming down the hill. And I didn't even know what happened. I was laying in the street, and then I got up and I saw the flood was starting, and it's like, that was just one story. We had to rescue people out of their vehicles. There was, you know, people that just, you warn them, don't drive down the block.
Yeah.
Please, you know, stay, like, you know, go back up all you can. No, I'm going through. And we wind up rescuing them. There was a couple that had a minivan with a baby in the back seat, and they started to hydroplane, and we see it all the time. I wish there could be signs put up, like midway on the block that could say, if it's flooded, like back up or turn around, because people, when you go for your license, the first thing is don't drive into floodwaters. And people are doing it because they don't think that New York, I think, would have that rate of rain where it could be dangerous for them. There's that issue where, you know, like there was an elderly man, he was trapped in his car and it was sailing down 4th Avenue. So I think it's a very pressing issue.
Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Joanne is a flood expert. Yeah.
I would just like to add that my wife fell into a manhole.
Oh.
Your wife is home.
Hi, John.
And she hurt herself significantly. What was happening is that the water started going back down into the manhole. She was crossing the street, didn't see the manhole.
Oh, could they shoot off?
Foot went in, and the water started going back down. Because it does create a whirlpool.
Yes.
That's the water goes back down. And she was caught in that. It took 3 people to pull her out.
That's, thank you for sharing that sad, awful story. Joanne's partner told me too, when he knows it's about to really get bad, he hears all the manhole covers on 4th Ave rattling. They make this sound like, and then all of a sudden, okay. Joanne has been through a lot. You see how the water, even bad up on 10th Street, but you see how much worse it gets down a couple of blocks later. Okay. So, those are just a few stories from D39, and there's many more, but we're gonna talk to the experts now. These smart people are thinking about what we can do to fix or mitigate, because we can't always stop it, but at least maybe we can slow it down and control it. So if you all want to pop up on the stage, we're gonna do Andrea, then Tara, then Jill, then Sam. And they're gonna do like 5 minutes on their view of the situation. They represent sort of different parts of the equation. And I'll fix that microphone for you in a second. We'll start off with Andrea. Do you wanna come down here and do it?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea from Gownaus Canal Conservancy. Great to see you all. So I've been tasked with talking about why this is happening. And I think where I always start, because we're down in Gownaus, is thinking about what the underlying ecology is of Gownaus. So this is an early, probably 1850s, 1860s map, or no, sorry, much earlier than that, prior to the canal being dredged. You can see essentially where my cursor is going now is 4th Avenue, and over here is Bond Street. So Gownaus Canal used to be a massive salt marsh that was fed by all those underground streams coming down from Park Slope and a tidal estuary connected to the East River. That is the ecology that is underneath us, and that is what asserts itself constantly. When that creek system was dredged and channelized into a canal, appropriate infrastructure was not built at that time to actually manage that flooding. And so this mill pond, which is pretty close to 4th and Carroll, is quite related to why there was a lot of flooding at 4th and Carroll, because all of those underground streams are flooding downhill. Essentially if you have a sump pump in your basement that is pumping water out into the sewer, that sewer is then going directly downhill as opposed to percolating in your backyard when you're uphill. We talk a lot about combined sewage overflow in Gownaus. We talk a lot about coastal flooding in general when we think about climate change. But really, the problems that we're talking about today are not about either of those. They're about increased precipitation and how that is impacting the overall watershed. As you can just imagine, if you have a whole lot of water up here, it's going to run very, very fast downhill. And that's what we're seeing with Joanne's story in particular. 4th Avenue has always flooded. It is getting a lot worse. There's no question about that. These are just a couple slides of what we're going to see in precipitation change over the coming years. We are completely unprepared for this. We are going to be, there is a lot of infrastructure that the city is investing in Gownaus in particular to address the existing flooding challenges and the combined sewage overflow. It's going to help tremendously with the existing issue. It is not in any way going to address the issue that we have ahead of us. And so we really need to be thinking about where, all throughout this section, from uphill down to the canal, where can we slow, stop, hold this stormwater so that it doesn't overwhelm us. We have to start living with water throughout the watershed. It's no longer just a Gownaus Canal issue, it's the entire watershed, and we need to work together on it. So as I said, and I think Tara's going to talk quite a bit about the infrastructure that DEP is doing down in the canal, but I really want you all to be thinking about greening the larger watershed. We're talking about, certainly there's going to be a lot of new street trees down in Gownaus. The Unified Stormwater Rule, which is being implemented in all that new development down in Gownaus, is actually going to really help mitigate the issue. However, we need a lot more uphill. We need brownstone owners to start making permeable spaces in their backyards and front yards, building green roofs, figuring out how to work as flood plugs to start holding that water uphill, or Joanne's issue is going to get a lot worse. I think I'm gonna end there and just turn it over to Tara to really talk through the infrastructure.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you, council member. I feel like you did my job for me. You did such a great job talking about our projects. So thank you. Thank you. I know it's never quick enough or enough, but we are working very hard in your neighborhood. I'm actually from the Bronx. I said this last night. I was in Brooklyn. I said, don't hold that against me. But I live high up. I don't live by water. I don't live over a stream, and I have been flooded 3 times in 3 years. So we are seeing that precipitation. I also previously, since coming from DEP to coming to DEP, I worked for the Parks Department. So I worked extensively on Hurricane Sandy recovery back when that happened. And I think for so many years, everybody was focused on the coast. And you guys have kind of both areas that encompass your neighborhood. But then Hurricane Ida came and it completely changed the game for what are we doing for inland flooding. So we use a variety of tools. Many of you are already probably familiar with it. Sewer upgrades are obviously the most effective. Green infrastructure is very effective as well. There's nothing that we do that is an end-all, be-all, final solution, but we're trying to use a multi-pronged strategy to have everything kind of build upon itself, and you'll see that when I talk about our construction project, which will soon hit 4th and Carroll. So this is our 5-year storm flooding modeling, and we have a great stormwater map that we recently released a few years ago. And you know, we use 311 data, we use different sorts of modeling tools to really see where are these low-lying areas. This is an obvious one here, but this tool has been really effective citywide because there's areas where you kind of look at the elevation and it does not look like a bowl, but we're seeing through this modeling that there's a lot of areas that are having increasing challenges with this increased precipitation. So that modeling has been really helpful, really useful for us. It informs us of where we're gonna put our resources, where we're gonna put these key capital projects. Something else recently that we've deployed are flood net sensors. We have them in strategic locations. We have 2 here around this neighborhood, and they give us real-time flooding data, which is great. It's almost like a flood sensor for your basement. Yes.
I had a question about the flood net, because I've been on to the site.
Yeah.
And there were times where we had like 4 feet of water, and it
Yeah.
only recorded like 6 inches. And I went in and updated it, so I don't know if they're really accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Good
don't
to know.
know if, no, I didn't know like if anybody reads the comments or the data.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. We have emergency management teams that are looking at this. We have them both in our Mayor's Office of Environmental Justice and Climate and at DEP. So we're looking at this. It's essentially a pilot program right now, so that's great to know. I'm happy to hear that feedback. I'm not sure what happened in that sense, but
Yeah.
when they started working, we were kind of like, oh, okay, this is really helpful for us to know. We're seeing what's getting impacted. We're also seeing, when we look at maps, we'll do, post-storm analysis on things, and we're looking where, for me, actually, a few months ago, we did a presentation in Bushwick, and we were expecting a bad storm. Bushwick got half an inch of rain. Me in the Bronx, I got 5 inches, and my basement flooded again. So they're very isolated, very heavy downpours that we're seeing, and it's becoming a big challenge, and obviously due to a changing climate. So we have this huge project, as the council member mentioned before. It's going in phases. It's quite large, and again, each phase is going to build upon itself to hopefully get up to that 100% of stormwater capture. So we have completed phase 1. We've increased the capacity of the sewer. We're going to phase 2, and we're spending an incredible amount of money to really update this infrastructure and hopefully alleviate a lot of these issues. We also it's not in this presentation, but we recently finished a project further upstream. We spent about $40 million upgrading water mains and storm sewers. So again, work upstream will help downstream as well. So you can see the project area and the impact area. these projects take a long time. They take a long time to do analyses on. They are incredibly large projects. They take a long time to design, and they take a long time to build. So that's why we try to use other stormwater capture techniques in addition to our gray infrastructure. And green infrastructure, I'm a former parkie, so I'm a big proponent of this. It serves many purposes. It serves flood mitigation purposes. It can help us reduce combined sewer overflows. It cleans the air. It cleans our neighborhood. So we've built almost 180 of green infrastructure assets in this neighborhood, in and around this neighborhood. We're always looking for more spaces. Green infrastructure isn't always right, depending on the soil. We have to do a lot of soil testing, and again, we do analysis on different places where we could potentially put green infrastructure, but we're always looking to squeeze that in. It's the type of infrastructure that we can do relatively cheaply and quickly. So before you're getting your gray infrastructure, we can potentially put in green. So the other thing that the council member had mentioned and other people had mentioned were the unified stormwater rule, which is really encouraging developers to green their space. And if they're building this development, they have to figure out a way to capture that stormwater. And at DEP, we're always looking for ways to capture stormwater before it enters the sewer system, so that we can increase the capacity in the event of strong storms. So we're looking at green roofs and various other mechanisms for people to capture that stormwater. And I mean, a green roof, again, it's serving multiple different purposes, and it's giving you a lot of other additional benefits. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, everybody. And I'm actually going to skip this slide. I want to highlight what the other speakers, especially the community members, have said. So I work for community engagement. I'm going to talk about preparedness. I'm not going to talk about what we do. We respond to events. And Nell, you probably recognize your slides here because I shamelessly stole them from my colleague Nell sitting right there.
Anytime.
I do want to talk, because I haven't heard anyone really address emergency notifications. So how many people here are subscribed to Notify NYC? That is excellent. That is probably one of the best results I've ever seen in the many hundreds of meetings that I've been to. Fantastic. If you're not, please do. If your neighbors aren't, please encourage them to do so. It is extremely important to know when it's coming, and Tara touched on it. These maps are fine. I live in Windsor Terrace, as I told Nick Simon last week. My neighborhood is not mapped on the most extreme stormwater climate change map, and we've seen, like our neighbors here in Park Slope and Gownaus, more flooding in the last 3 years than in the 20 before that I've lived there. So I've lived on the block on Sherman Street between 10th and 11th for 26 years, something like that, in June. And yeah, so I was with you all on 929, cleaning out my basement. But my neighbors on the other side of the street, I'm on the even side, on the odd number side, there is an underground stream there, and they got it much worse. They also have, my basement is completely below the street level, and their basements are slightly above the street level. It's like a combo, and they had it worse. So it's something. But the other thing I'm going to touch on, I'm not even going to do this here, so we're just going to go for it. I already did this slide. I want to touch on a couple of things. Mitigation, which is what you heard your neighbors undertake. You'll hear more from Simon's there, field form. But preparedness and mitigation, what's the difference? So when we prepare for emergencies, we might have a go bag, we might have a couple weeks of supplies. Helene, for all of us, just like 929, because we don't really have a name for it last year, 929-23, certainly is an exclamation point for me. Ida was the first, cri de coeur, call to arms. for action for inland communities. You heard about that. And Helene is just like a whole next level of what can happen in other communities. There is also a word that I would like to throw in that's on my mind, because my job is to go all over the city. My job is to prepare communities, not just individuals, and specifically looking for BIPOC communities, communities of people with disabilities, to look for people that may need a little more help. And for me, that's what equity means to me. And I don't hear that in the discussion. I mentioned it last week in our meeting. So I love that this is happening for us, for those of us who have the means to mitigate the effects of this horrible impacts of climate change. But we have neighbors in Kensington who do not have these resources. So the challenge for us as neighbors and community members is to figure out what is our role in inserting equity into our mitigation and our preparedness. And it's something that we think about at New York City Emergency Management. I think about it every day, because every time I go to a new community, it's a different set of challenges. Whether it's a Chinese, practically monolingual community at Peck Avenue near Casena Park, if anybody knows what they experienced in Ida, and there's a whole raft of issues. So our job as really communities of privilege in Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, you can live right next door to someone who doesn't have the privilege, who's living on a fixed income, who worked for the city for 50 years, and now has taken money out of their pension fund to try to mitigate the horrible damage in the home that they were hoping to age in, right? And I know that there may be people here who are experiencing it or who have neighbors doing it. And so it's just, there are always more questions. But I love the idea of a flood club. I love the idea of neighbors getting together to find the solutions. Because as Tara mentioned, the big stuff is going to take a long time. And there are things that we can do collectively to lessen the impact, and especially to slow that stormwater going into the sewer system. Like, if we're all focused on that, if 30% of us, 40% of us, 50% of us on our block, we can make a big difference. And the other thing I want to say is about cleaning catch basins, because the majority of my social media posts before 9/29 has been about clearing the catch basins. I take before and after pictures, I put them in my presentations, and I'm obsessed with it. Why? I don't have $10 million, but I can go to the foot of my block on Sherman Street and 11th Avenue, and I can clear the leaves and the garbage off of those catch basins. And I'm about changing what I can, and just like moving and to try to stay positive, to have a porous backyard, to put, I didn't hear anybody mention native plants, but to use native plants in our landscaping for myriad reasons, which I'm not going to go into, but they're also part of the solution, and certainly part of any green infrastructure. And I know the Conservancy has a plant sale coming up, right? Wait a minute, you can get some native plants. So that's what I want to leave you with, to stay connected, to continue, like I heard you do, helping your neighbors who may need a little bit more help. And also, I know that there were people here that came to the Strengthening Communities info session. We have a program that helps to provide community networks with funding to create a community emergency plan. I encourage this community to look into it and apply. We are taking, the applications will soon be open sometime between the 11th and the 17th, depending on who you talk to. And we encourage people to do it, and please spread the word. Thanks. And I have giveaways too. So these are flood water alarms. They go on the basement wall, the sensors go on the floor, and you hear a loud noise. It does require a battery, which we did not provide.
Hello everybody. My name is Sam. I'm the owner of Field Form. We are landscape design and build company based in Gownaus. And over the course of the last few years, we've noticed a lot of the projects that we've worked on, the clients that we've been working with, experienced increased issues with having flooding and just not knowing where it's coming from. So we have tried to develop a macro view that overlaps with the micro in how each of these individual gardens have an impact, not just to the homeowners, but to the larger neighborhood at large. And there's a lot in this presentation, but I'm going to try to go right through it and get to the strategy side, which I agree. I'm going to skip through all this historical information, and I'm going to get to this photo. So I don't know how many of you have experienced something like this. Basically a wall of water about to enter your basement. We've dealt with a lot of projects that have experienced this, and what we're focused on right now is basically blocks and lots on blocks in these two specific outfalls, OH006, OH007, both contributing to combined sewer overflow, but also experiencing this runoff condition from the park all the way down to the canal. And we were lucky enough to be involved with a number of people on this specific block, 10th Street, between 7th and 8th, and 11th Street as well, who decided to come together and ask us for our services in attempting to mitigate some of the flood risk that they were experiencing. So this is just an overview of the rooftops on this block, all of which contribute about 3 million gallons a year on average to the sewer system. So we wanted to take somewhat of a holistic approach, look at each individual lot as a standalone, and look at the entire block and see how the surface runoff was experienced in each lot through the surface runoff, through the, through different flood impacts. So this is the backyard of one of these lots. And we're basically excavating for a stormwater chamber, which is one of the different strategies that we've applied. And I'm just going to go through a list of the different strategies, basically from the rooftop, down the gutter, all the way to the back of each individual garden. And I'm not going to explain in too much detail, but I'm just going to show you a list of the different strategies that we've been applying. So there's, from the rooftop, the actual gutter itself, diverting or optimizing the rainfall down the downspout, and redirecting it from the storm drain into the backyard. Expanding drains so that we can reduce the risk of clogging. Installing retaining walls to mitigate overflow from one property to another. Surface waterproofing, foundational waterproofing, permeable paving and planting, surface grading, linear slot drains, French drains, catch basins, dry wells, and retention chambers. So a combination of these strategies can help mitigate flooding in a variety of different ways. Obviously every storm is different. So this is sort of a overlay of one individual backyard and the system that's been installed beneath it. And these systems have the capacity of managing upwards of 1,500 gallons or more of water during an 8-hour period. So on this particular block, we installed about 5 or 6 of these systems. And combined, they're able to manage over 100,000 gallons of rainfall coming from the rooftops. And just zooming out here to how each of these individual lots interact with each other. They all have different strategies, but by mitigating runoff on a lot-by-lot basis and looking at the entire block, we can develop some more informed strategies. Yeah, and I just want to commend all the members of the block who were able to actually get together and work with each other, because it's very, very rare to see this actually happen. But I think they've been able to actually make an impact, and by developing, organizing this kind of flood club strategy, hopefully it can inspire other people in the neighborhood and other blocks who can get together with their block associations and make a difference. Yeah. So. There you go.
Excuse me, what was the cost for actually doing that to the owner?
Yeah, so the costs vary, but the idea is that these strategies can be achievable. They vary between any one individual strategy being $2,000 to $3,000, and a series of 5 of them being upwards of $20,000 to $25,000. Obviously, digging a huge pit in the ground is one of the more expensive options because of the labor requirement involved. Yeah, we're trying to offer solutions that are within reach to regular people. And if you look at the cost per gallon, it's actually quite reasonable. And there's a design phase that's required just to try to develop the most optimum strategy.
And since this is new technology, how have banks responded to funding it?
I don't know anything about banks funding it because we haven't.
Are you a
done it.
banker?
No, but it's a fundamental issue whenever you do property improvements.
These are really good questions. We are going to give time at the end for you all to come up and talk to these experts. So you guys grab these microphones and pull it off those stands that are falling and just share it. We're going to do a little bit of rapid fire Q&A. You might just have to share the mic and hand it back and forth. And then we're going to break and let you talk to these people directly so that you have time. And we're going to break up into stations. We got 30 questions. By the way, 140 people signed up for this event. We told half of them they couldn't come because we were so overbooked because the room only holds 70. So there's just as many people who wanted to be here that couldn't be here tonight. So we're taking questions that we got through the event form. We got 30 of them. And I just want to rapid fire some of them, and whoever wants to answer can answer. All right? So a lot of questions about porous pavement. People want to know, there's that test going on in Windsor Terrace. Will porous pavement be made available to the private sector or citizens who want to install it? And how do they know if there's plans to do porous pavement in their area? Anyone?
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
I can speak to that a little bit. I don't know exactly in this neighborhood if we're doing porous pavement or where exactly, but we are trying to put porous pavement wherever we can. We're doing it for our cloudburst projects. We're doing some pilot projects in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. So I think we're trying to see, number one, how do you implement that? What does it look like? Is it effective? I think there might need to be some more studies done on that. I think it's looking very good and promising.
Can they just do it if they wanted to do it in their own property?
I don't see why not. We are always pushing more permeable pavers. The more permeable your site can be, the better. And there's permeable concrete and asphalt. And I think asphalt might work a little bit better than concrete, but you might know better than me, but I don't know. But either way, the more permeable you can make your site, the better. And if there is maintenance issues as well, so we're trying to see how does that hold up, how is that maintained. So there's a ways to go for us, but we're trying to implement as much as we can.
I was at a conference where they said, don't use the word maintenance, use stewardship. Which means you gotta clean it. Same with the rain gardens and same with the green infrastructure. I heard the city say, we'd love to do more green infrastructure. The problem is, who's going to steward it? Because they get dirty and then they're not effective and they get trashed. So does anyone want to comment on that?
Sure. So we are the only community-based organization who's ever had a maintenance contract with DEP. We're very proud of that. We have 11 rain gardens on 6th Street that we've been maintaining and have learned that, yes, you actually need to do skilled maintenance on them at least once a week in order to make them thrive. So we're doing a pilot, and we're working quite closely with DEP to try to really grow that maintenance in watersheds across the city. And figure out how to, I mean, really, one of the things DEP is struggling with in terms of managing they have 13,000 rain gardens in the city. Many of them are in horrible repair. It is very difficult to find the skilled workforce that can actually touch each of those rain gardens once a week. So GCC and some other workforce development organizations across the city are working on developing a pipeline. So how do we all of this spongy infrastructure that we're talking about, it's new skills that people don't have, that we don't have a workforce for yet. So we really need to think about what the pipeline is and how we develop the green jobs for the future.
In the spirit of rapid fire, I'm going to keep going. So a lot of questions about rain gardens. Can I get one in front of my place? How do I apply for one in my block? Can you provide a list of contractors that do that? Would planting in schoolyards be a good way to absorb water? Anyone want to take that?
Please request, you can request that to 311. If you'd like a rain garden, we don't really take requests, but we have a lot of people that don't want it, believe it or not. So I'm always happy to have people have it. So they go in the public right of way. So the city will contract out to put the rain gardens there. In terms of schoolyards, we work with many organizations. We work with the Parks Department quite frequently to install stormwater management parks and park playgrounds. And we also work with a wonderful organization, you're probably familiar, the Trust for Public Land. They build the most beautiful playgrounds. It is not the playgrounds we all grew up on, where you're on rusty swings and asphalt and you burn yourself. They built the most beautiful playgrounds, and they work really hard for us by capturing tons of stormwater. So please advocate for that. We want to do more and more and more, and again, it's serving multiple purposes.
Yes, and actually, there's some discussion about could the park at Washington Square Park behind the old Dome Schoolhouse, could that be made an absorbent park?
Part of it already is.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna keep rolling here. Sewer blockage. I've been told the sewer lines can be cleaned out and flooding would not occur. Is that true? When will the sewer system be improved to handle increased capacity? Where can residents contact a suspected sewer blockage? How can I prevent sewer backup in my property during heavy rainfall?
Did you say to increase capacity or increase capacity?
Basically,
You can talk
people,
about these,
I think
yeah.
people want to know, like, do they have to fix the sewer connections themselves, or do they report it to the DEP?
So, you all have a sanitary sewer line, you have 2 water lines. You have one for water, drinking water that brings water into your house, and then you have one for your sanitary sewer, which all your wastewater will go back out through that line. Homeowners in New York City own those lines in their entirety, from your house all the way to the sewer mains and water mains. So I actually didn't know that until I started working for DEP and I was already a homeowner. So then I'm really glad that I signed up for our service line protection program. Highly recommend it if you don't already have it. It's through American Water Resources, but it is a DEP program. We fund it. So look that up. They call it AWR. You can call them and you can add that onto your water bill. It's relatively inexpensive. It's gone up recently, but I do it. I had plumbers at my house twice, and I was not charged a dime, and they came within hours.
I think it's like $150 a year or something.
It's totally worth it. It's for normal wear and tear on our new sewer line. So that's one thing that I highly suggest. Again, I think the council member brought this up before too. I said you did my job for me. You really, I'm sure you're very environmentally conscious, but we cannot throw grease down the drain. We can't throw garbage anywhere. Wipes nothing is flushable. Even if it says flushable, it is not flushable. And that has impacts on our wastewater treatment plants, our harbor water. So that's your private service line. That keeps both your service line and your plumbing operating at maximum capacity. It helps our infrastructure. If our infrastructure is surcharging, most of the time it is because of a severe storm, and that's where you'll see sewer backups during a severe storm and flooding. Typically, if there's a sewer backup on a dry day, that's a bigger issue. We don't have that often. Most of our sewer backups are caused by grease, debris, large rainstorms, and we're seeing that more and more. It used to be solely caused by grease and debris. Now it's these heavy storms.
That's the Fatberg thing?
Fatbergs, where you want
Remember
to see.
Fatbergs? Remember that was
Oh,
the
yeah.
concern? Quickly moving to laws and policies. So now there's a new law that homeowners need to disclose flooding when they rent or sell. And also for renters, so landlords have to do that. A few people were asking about permitting and how could we get these huge buildings being built along 4th Avenue, don't they just displace more water? And I wonder, is that covered by the Unified Stormwater Rule? And are those big buildings making the problem worse, or are they actually holding more water themselves?
Yeah, I'll answer that. They are making the problem better, which is amazing, and I know it seems really counterintuitive, but the new Unified Stormwater Rule is actually making all of that new construction that's been built since 2021 hold stormwater on site. So it's literally the pipe from the building to the sewer system has to be a lot narrower, so the building has to hold it on site. So actually the numbers show, and I think we're going to continue seeing this as the buildings go up, that new buildings are actually reducing combined sewage overflow, which is of course the issue, but also going to be reducing the inland flooding that we're seeing.
But thank you for that good answer. Someone said there's like a cement race going on where there's more water, so my neighbors are putting up higher retention walls. And shouldn't they be greening their backyards or patios instead of building more cement? Anyone want to take that?
That's true.
Yeah, I think more permeable surface is going to be better for everybody, especially closer to the park. But the ground can only handle so many gallons of water, so there's only so much any individual can do, which is why it's so important that people are able to actually work together and be able to have a greater impact. And I think this is really all about participation at the end of the day. So all of these strategies can have a certain type of dynamic unto themselves, but unless they're combined with other strategies and people are communicating with each other and combining impacts, it's not going to make too much.
Floodwater connects us. Okay, there's so many questions on this list that we don't have time to, and I want to give people time to talk to you, and also we have to wrap up at 7:30. So I'm going to ask you to hold that question. Sorry. We're going to divide up into groups, okay? And people can talk to you as group experts. So Joanne and Stephanie, you're going to go over to neighbors, so people want to talk to you. Preparedness and policy, that's going to be council members Hanif and also DEP and Jill. And then Sam, field form, you're going to go over to landscape in that corner. And Andrea, you're going to go over to, what does that say over there? Area what? Area infrastructure. You can go over there. All right, and everybody can go to your,